it's almost like at the moment of victory, a load of people decided that victory wasn't enough. I think there are, though, I mean, we should credit it. There are a lot of young people in their teens and 20s who have actually absorbed this worldview, who do actually believe that we live in a uniquely, dangerous time, as opposed to being the most fortunate people in history ever anywhere, and who actually have imbibed these ideas that we live in this on the verge of fascism sort of state, and who have very little context with history and all sorts of other things. And I really, one of the aims of this book is it's written for those people, and I really hope they read it, to try to get them out of that and just suggest a more reasonable view of the situation we're in. Because my experience in recent years, I think I say this in the introduction, is that on all of these issues of LGBT issues, race issues, and women's issues, basically my experience in recent years has been it's been like watching a train finally pulling into its desired destination, only at the very moment of pulling into the station to suddenly get a head of steam and go shooting off down the tracks and off the tracks and scattering people in their wake. And it's almost like at the moment of victory, a load of people decided that victory wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. We see that all over the place. I mean, I think Sweden is probably the best example of that, where they've had this great egalitarian society where men and women are so obviously equal, and yet the social justice warriors are now trying to re-engineer society so that there'll be as many women engineers, but we know that women just aren't as interested in that. That's not sexist. It just is.
Right. Right. I mean, this stuff is dementing because we're trying to run a set of programs that can't be run simultaneously and are not going to work. And I mean, we can both wax eloquent about the number of contradictions, for instance, in these movements that's going on at the moment. And I mean, the most striking one to me is what I describe as the hardware software issue, where
I was about to get to it. Take us there.
Hardware software issue. I think I owe this sort of insight from conversations with our mutual friend Eric Weinstein. But the way I see it is that every rights movement in the late 20th century discovered that the best way to get sympathy for your case was to say that you had a hardware issue. So Gay argues against a lifestyle choice by saying no. Born this way, moved from lifestyle choice to Lady Gaga. And you see, I actually say, I mean, I'm definitely chucked out of the Church of Gay for saying this, but I actually say, and I wrote this before the most recent study emerged in Science magazine, that was the largest study of gay men and women to have come out so far. I actually say what that study did conclude, which is that it's almost certainly got a significant hardware component, but there's also a nurture rearing issue. There are lots of things that are slightly buck the settled place that we thought, or at least a lot of gay rights campaigners got to. But it was understandable to do hardware rather than software because it countered the sort of religious bigotry among others that did lifestyle choice. And but the problem about this is that other movements learned from that. The trans movement in particular learned from that, and in recent years, in super fast time, has been trying to say absolutely nothing to do with software. This is a hardware issue. Trans people are born trans, and as I say, we actually don't know very much about it. But here's a dementing thing, if I may make the point, which is that we are pretending at the moment in our societies that gay is hardware, trans is hardware, but being a woman is software. Now that is dementing.
Right. So you can somehow pick your gender, which we know is a physical reality, but you can't pick your sexuality, which science has proven there's at least a conversation to have there.
Right. So chromosomes are of no significance, but how you feel is the most important thing. We're trying to make hardware software and software hardware. And, as I say, I mean, there's no wonder that this sort of casualty list of feminists has kept growing, because there's a very noble, I give a roll call of them in a chapter in the book. It's no wonder that a group of feminists kept coming across this tripwire, because it's incredibly insulting for a lot of women to be told, as Judith Butler and others had started off the sort of theoretical stuff, and others have picked it up and weaponized it, that, being a woman is a matter of performativity. And as I say, you can't run these two programs simultaneously, but we've been trying. And I think that's one of the absolute bases for our dementing manner.
So I want to do a little more on trans at the end, but we'll go in order of the chapters that you did. But can you just explain? I thought it was really interesting that you separated the gay and trans chapters because, it is LGBT. And I always tell people that me as the G in this case, I have no more insight into what a trans person's life is like than a straight male would or a lesbian would or anything else. These are very different things, but we've lumped these letters together. But why did you intentionally separate it for the purposes of the book?
Well, I think they are separate things. I mean, I say at one point in the gay chapter, the G's don't have very much in common at all with the L's. I mean, never meet particularly. Certainly no spaces. No, G's and L's don't really have much in common. The G's and the L's are very suspicious of the B's, and the G's and the L's and the B's don't have anything really in common with the T's, and they're all stuck in this. Dave Chappelle, rather, just a week before my book came out, did this at a rather large audience on his Netflix show. They're sort of in the same car, but they're very different destinations. And the thing with the T one that is so interesting, which I as I say, I've really been delving into this and speaking to a lot of people and interviewing people and really trying to work out, as I say, what's actually going on here. And one of the things I think that's most striking about it, and why I finish on trans, is that it's obvious why trans runs against women. Sorry, I should say, the fascinating thing about this is, of course, the intersectionalists and social justice warriors all pretend that these are like interlocking oppressions, and that if you undo one, you will undo the others, or that you'll create this sort of harmony, because women's issues and gay issues and racial issues are all the same thing. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that they are exactly wrong, because each of these issues actually runs against the others. So, as I say, it's obvious why T runs against women, because among other things, it does things and makes claims about what women are that are highly insulting to a lot of women. Not all, but an awful lot. And then you have the run against gay that trans presents. And I think this is an absolutely fascinating corner that hasn't been gone into enough, which is that, as we know now from studies, young people diagnosed with so-called gender dysphoria, what studies we have show that around 80 to 85% of the kids diagnosed with that are going to grow out of it and are likely to become gay men or gay women. And we all know this from our own experience. And I think that there has been a totally submerged conversation in recent years, which has only happened in private. And by the way, one of the nicest things about this book starting to be read is the number of people who say to me, Douglas, this is the conversation my wife and I have over dinner, and we say we cannot talk about this outside of this house, and so on. So I say my self-appointed role is to say aloud all of the things that everyone else whispers. But you see, but I know that this conversation has been going on among gay people in particular, which is, am I totally sure that my sort of tomboy friend wouldn't have been diagnosed as actually gender dysphoric? Am I sure that my, male friend who was a kind of camp, teenager, wouldn't have, if it had been now, have been told, actually, you're not going to grow up to be a happy, healthy gay man. You're going to grow up to be a woman. And we've decided you're actually a woman. And that hits at the absolute root of a lot of gay men and a lot of gay women. And we've just passed it over as if it's all part of the same happy rainbow coalition. It isn't. It totally destroys the other bits of the coalition.
So, all right, so let's just continue with the trans part then, since we're in the thick of it right now. Do you think there's also something bizarre about the amount of energy that the topic trans has? Where, so gay rights, you can very easily start, you can go from Stonewall, you can look over the course of a few decades where there were some wins, then it happened in America at least through states' rights, and then eventually the Supreme Court and a cultural awareness and all that. And then it was almost as if the second gay marriage happened, everyone was kind of like this. And then trans, which wasn't really being talked about, and you can argue maybe we should have paid more attention to it culturally or whatever, but that it suddenly became like the it thing. And the second it became the it thing, you couldn't take any counter argument whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. Time magazine puts it on the cover in 2015, trans, the next rights battle. See, again, there are people for whom life is given meaning by having an endless set of rights battles. And once you've done gay, you got to do trans, and once you've done trans, you got to get on to non-binary or whatever you've made up today, and so on. And I think that people should be intensely suspicious about people who try to get meaning in their lives from this St. George in retirement issue.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.